Hello, friends. The Social Security Administration has updated several important rules for 2026, and many seniors are discovering the impact only after it affects them personally. They're not learning about these changes through a phone call or a clear notice in advance. Instead, they're finding out when a monthly payment arrives smaller than expected, when a letter suddenly demands repayment of benefits, or when a reduction appears in their check without any warning. Today, I'm going to walk you through 6 major restrictions that are already in effect or are set to take effect very soon. These are rules that can limit how much you earn, what actions you can take, and in some situations, how much of your Social Security money you actually get to keep. A few of these restrictions are completely new. Others have been quietly expanded over time. Every one of them has the potential to cost you significant money if you're unaware of how they work. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to the Frank American and turn on notifications. This channel is dedicated to covering exactly these kinds of updates, the rule changes, the new restrictions, the deadlines that often pass with very little public attention. Subscribers here often learn about these developments before they impact their benefits. Subscribe now, and let's get started. The first restriction affects people who are collecting Social Security while continuing to work before reaching full retirement age. If that describes you, the Social Security Administration places a limit on how much income you can earn each year. For 2026, that earnings limit is set at $24,480 annually. If your earnings exceed that amount, Social Security withholds benefits according to a specific formula. For every $2 you earn above the limit, $1 is withheld from your benefits. For someone receiving a $1,800 monthly benefit, earning $10,000 over the threshold could result in more than $400 per month being withheld. In many cases, beneficiaries suddenly notice a much smaller deposit, or in some months no deposit at all, with very little explanation provided at the time. What makes this rule so confusing is that it feels counterintuitive. You work for years to earn your benefits. You've started receiving them. At the same time, you may be working part-time, taking seasonal work, or earning supplemental income. Then, without much warning, your Social Security payment shrinks because the earnings test triggered a withholding adjustment. Many people assume a mistake has occurred. In most cases, it hasn't. What many beneficiaries do not realize is that the money withheld under this rule is not permanently lost. Once you reach full retirement age, the Social Security Administration reviews your record and adjusts your benefit to account for months when benefits were withheld. As a result, your monthly payment increases going forward. In other words, this restriction functions more as a delay than a true penalty. However, during the years before full retirement age, you still have to manage with less monthly income. Understanding the rule ahead of time can make the difference between preparing for it and being completely surprised by it. For individuals who will reach full retirement age during 2026, there is a more generous earnings threshold. In that situation, the limit rises to $65,160 for the year. Once you officially reach your full retirement age birthday, the earnings test ends altogether. From that point forward, you can earn as much as you want without reducing your Social Security benefits. The second restriction involves identity verification and account management. Not long ago, if you needed to update direct deposit information, establish a new account, or complete certain Social Security transactions, you could often verify your identity over the telephone. That option has now been sharply reduced. Beginning in 2025, the Social Security Administration significantly limited telephone-based identity verification for most actions involving payment changes and new benefit applications. Today, beneficiaries generally must either verify their identity online through a My Social Security account at SSA.gov or visit a Social Security office in person. For millions of older Americans who are not comfortable managing accounts online, this change presents a serious challenge. According to Social Security and Medicare-related data, approximately 6 million Medicare beneficiaries still do not have internet access at home. At the same time, numerous Social Security offices across the country have experienced closures, reduced staffing, or cuts to in-person services. The result is a difficult combination. Stricter verification requirements paired with fewer convenient locations where those requirements can be completed face-to-face. For many seniors, this has created real barriers when attempting to make important changes to their accounts. One practical step you can take today is creating a My Social Security account before you actually need it. Setting up the account requires identity verification, an email address, and a phone number, but completing the process ahead of time is usually much easier than trying to navigate it during an urgent situation. Once your account is established, many common account management tasks can be completed online whenever needed, reducing the risk of delays when important issues arise. The third restriction is the overpayment recovery process, often referred to as the overpayment clawback. This has become one of the most financially challenging issues facing beneficiaries today, and it expanded significantly in 2025 in ways many people still do not fully understand. The Social Security Administration has mailed notices to hundreds of thousands of beneficiaries stating that they received overpayments, sometimes totaling thousands of dollars, and demanding repayment. If the recipient does not respond or cannot arrange repayment within 30 days, the agency may begin withholding up to 50% of the monthly benefit check until the alleged debt has been recovered. For someone receiving a monthly benefit of $1,600, that could mean losing $800 every month until the balance is repaid. What makes this situation especially frustrating is that many overpayments were not caused by fraud or intentional wrongdoing. In a substantial number of cases, the issue resulted from Social Security's own calculation errors or administrative mistakes. Even so, beneficiaries who receive these notices are often still required to address the repayment demand under existing rules. If an overpayment letter arrives, your most important action is responding immediately and in writing. You generally have two key options available. The first is filing an appeal if you believe the amount is incorrect. The second is requesting a waiver if repayment would create financial hardship, and if the overpayment was not your fault. Both actions should be taken before Social Security begins withholding benefits. Once withholding starts, resolving the situation can become much more difficult. If you receive one of these notices, submitting a written response as quickly as possible can protect important rights and preserve additional options. The fourth restriction concerns full retirement age. If you were born in 1960 or later, your full retirement age is now officially set at 67 years old, not 65, not 66. The transition that began decades ago has now reached its final stage, and 2026 marks the completion of that long-term change. You can still claim benefits as early as age 62, but doing so comes with substantial permanent reduction. Claiming at 62 now results in approximately a 30% reduction in monthly benefits, compared with waiting until full retirement age. For example, someone entitled to a $2,000 monthly benefit at full retirement age would receive about $1,400 per month if benefits begin at age 62. That reduction remains in place permanently and does not disappear later. Over retirement spanning 20 years, the difference between claiming at age 62 and waiting until age 67 can exceed $144,000 in total benefits. Compared with delaying benefits until age 70, the difference can surpass $259,000 over the same period. The financial advantage of waiting has become more significant than ever because the penalty for claiming early is now larger than it was for previous generations. Timing your claim has become one of the most important retirement decisions many Americans will make. The fifth restriction affects beneficiaries who plan to spend extended periods living outside the United States. Social Security has specific international payment rules, and in some situations those rules can reduce or even stop benefits altogether. Unfortunately, many people learn about these limitations only after they have already moved abroad. For recipients of supplemental security income, commonly known as SSI, the rule is particularly strict. If you remain outside the United States for 30 consecutive days or longer, your SSI payments stop. Although payments may be restarted after you return and requalify, the missed payments are generally not restored retroactively. The gap remains permanent. For individuals receiving standard Social Security retirement benefits, the rules vary depending on the country involved. In most countries around the world, retirement benefits continue normally without interruption. However, there are exceptions. Two countries remain completely restricted: Cuba and North Korea. Under current law, Social Security payments cannot be sent to beneficiaries residing in those locations. In addition, several countries that were formerly part of the Soviet Union, including Azerbaijan, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Moldova, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan, are subject to special payment procedures. In certain circumstances, beneficiaries may be required to meet additional verification requirements, including appearing at designated U.S. government facilities to maintain eligibility for payments. If you have family overseas, are considering relocating abroad, or plan to spend an extended period outside the United States, it is extremely important to review Social Security's international payment rules before making those plans. A simple assumption about benefit eligibility can quickly become an expensive surprise if the rules are not understood in advance. Before making any decisions about living overseas, take a few minutes to review the payment rules directly through Social Security's official resources. Understanding the requirements before you leave can prevent major complications later. Now, let's move to restriction number 6. And this one is different from the others because it concerns the future of the entire Social Security system. In February 2026, the Congressional Budget Office released an updated projection regarding the financial status of the Social Security Trust Fund. According to that updated estimate, the trust fund reserves are now projected to be exhausted in 2032. That date is 1 year earlier than the projection issued in 2025 and 2 years earlier than the forecast released in 2024. Several factors contributed to moving that timeline forward. One factor is the expansion of benefit obligations created by the Social Security Fairness Act, which extended benefits to many former public sector workers. Another factor is the senior tax deduction included in the One Big Beautiful Bill, which reduces some of the payroll tax revenue flowing into the system. At the same time, demographic trends continue to place increasing pressure on Social Security as larger numbers of baby boomers enter retirement and begin collecting benefits simultaneously. So what exactly happens if the projected date arrives and Congress has not taken action? If trust fund reserves are depleted in 2032, Social Security would still collect payroll taxes every month. The program would not disappear. However, benefits could only be paid from incoming tax revenue rather than from accumulated reserves. Current estimates suggest that ongoing payroll taxes would cover only about 72 to 77% of scheduled benefits. In practical terms, that would mean an automatic reduction of approximately 23 to 28% for all beneficiaries across the board. The reduction would not depend on age, income level, or how long someone has been receiving benefits. Everyone would be affected. Using today's average monthly Social Security benefit of roughly $2,081 as an example, a 23% reduction would lower payments by about $479 per month. A 28% reduction would reduce benefits by approximately $583 every month. It is important to understand that this outcome is not guaranteed. Congress has stepped in to address Social Security funding challenges in the past, and lawmakers still have the ability to make changes before reserves are exhausted. However, the amount of time available to address the problem is getting shorter, and the financial adjustments required become more difficult with each passing year. The people with the most at stake are current retirees, near retirees, and anyone planning to retire before 2040. Waiting until the last minute to pay attention to this issue could leave people with fewer options and less time to prepare. The time to understand these projections is now, not when the deadline is only months away. So let's review the complete picture. There are 6 major restrictions that are already affecting seniors financially or are expected to have a growing impact in the near future. The earnings test limits how much you can earn before reaching full retirement age. In 2026, earnings above $24,480 can trigger benefit withholding, although those withheld amounts are later factored back into your benefit calculation after full retirement age. Telephone verification for many Social Security account changes has largely disappeared. Beneficiaries are increasingly expected to use online accounts or visit local offices in person, making advance account setup more important than ever. Overpayment notices continue to be sent to hundreds of thousands of beneficiaries. Once withholding begins, the process becomes much more difficult to challenge, making immediate action essential whenever one of these letters arrives. Full retirement age is now officially 67 for everyone born in 1960 or later. As a result, claiming benefits early carries a larger permanent reduction than many people realize. SSI recipients lose benefits after spending 30 consecutive days outside the United States, and certain countries remain subject to significant restrictions or payment limitations. And finally, the Social Security Trust Fund is currently projected to exhaust its reserves in 2032. If lawmakers fail to act before then, automatic benefit reductions of roughly 23 to 28% could affect every recipient. These are not small technical changes hidden in government paperwork. They are rules and projections that have the potential to impact retirement income, monthly budgets, travel plans, and long-term financial security for millions of Americans. If you found this information helpful, make sure to subscribe to The Frank American. Share this video with a friend, family member, neighbor, or anyone you know who receives Social Security benefits. The more people understand these changes before they affect their checks, the better prepared they can be for what lies ahead.